Fade in. Exterior ominous river, night. A broad, peaceful river flows steadily in the pale moonlight. A large tree-lined bluff overlooks the water. Beyond the bluff, a row of houses' rooftops peek out above the tree line, revealing a quiet, small town. Dissolve 2, exterior mom's house, night. Tim Green, 36, an average height but decent build, parks his pickup truck in the driveway. The door is labeled with Green's Lawn Service. He steps out and looks at the front door. The door is slightly ajar.
911. What is the address of your emergency?
1610 Orange Street.
Okay, what is your emergency?
It's my mom. I think she's dead.
How do you know she is dead? Is she breathing?
Interior mom's house, night. Tim kneels in front of his mom, late 50s. Her lifeless body sits in a living room chair with a syringe sticking out of her left arm and rubber hose tied around it.
No, she has no pulse either, and there is a needle in her arm. Please send someone.
Okay, sir, I have the police and medic on their way. Please stay on the line until they arrive.
Okay, this is not like her. She never uses drugs. I don't understand.
Police lights flash in the room from the adjacent window. Dissolve 2, interior prison visitors room, day. Richard Green, 38, dressed in orange prison clothes with tattoos on his arms and a scruffy beard, walks past the occupied windows. He sits at the vacant window to reveal Tim sitting across from him.
Hey, brother, what's going on?
It's Mom. She's dead.
He pauses and begins to cry. Richard sits silent with rage in his eyes.
I know who did this.
The cops are ruling it a suicide.
Do you believe them?
I was there. I found her.
Tim wipes the tears from his eyes. Interior Richard's cell, day. Richard walks up to the open cell door. Randolph, late 50s, clean-cut, wearing slacks and matching jacket, sits on the bottom bunk.
2 visitors in one day. I must be special.
Mr. Popular,
Did you hear?
I am sorry, kid. I have my people looking into it.
I already know who did it.
Thought you might have an idea, but you can't let it distract from your next mission.
About that, can I switch out?
I thought you didn't want to go back home.
I didn't, but now I have a reason.
It's been a while. I just think it might be too much for you.
No such thing, remember? You taught me that?
I have another operative set up.
I know the landscape. Who is the target?
A meth guy named Kimball.
John Kimball?
Randolph stands and walks to the doorway.
I will make the arrangements. See you in 3 months.
Dissolve 2, interior Tim's truck, day. Tim drives his truck on the Lone Mountain Highway with Richard in the passenger seat.
Thanks for making the trip again, little brother.
Of course, it will be good to have you back home.
It's been a minute.
The kids are looking forward to meeting their uncle.
And the wife?
That might take some time.
I get it.
What about Dad?
That's gonna take more time.
Are you still holding on to that?
Did he gamble your college tuition away too? No, you had that baseball scholarship.
Doesn't that weight get heavy?
After a while, you get used to it.
And how's that working out for you?
Dissolve 2, exterior cemetery, day. Richard walks up to a small headstone, kneels down and gently places flowers on the ground in front of it.
Hey, Mom. Sorry it took me this long to come home.
Tears fill his eyes. He wipes them away.
I'm sorry I wasn't here to protect you, but I'm here now. I've done some things you wouldn't approve of, but they were for good reasons. And it's my job. My training has prepared me for times like this. I will hold him accountable for what he's done. I promise.
He wipes his tear-stained face.
I will love you always.
He stands and walks away with an intense strength in his stare. Dissolve 2, interior liquor store, night. Richard walks over to the cooler wall, opens a door and grabs a soda. The clerk, older and worn, sits on a stool behind the counter while he reads a magazine. Richard walks up to the counter.
How's it going?
Another day in paradise.
Can I get a pack of Marlboro Reds, please?
Cowboy Killer's coming up.
The clerk reaches for the cigarettes.
God damn it, woman, we don't need that shit. Am I made of money?
Richard turns to reveal Jake and Misty in the next aisle over. Both of them are strung out and skinny. Jake has a tight grip on Misty's arm, her other arm already bruised.
Hey man, is that necessary?
I didn't ask you.
Easy, I don't want any trouble.
No trouble here.
Richard pulls out his wallet from his back pocket. Jake drags Misty toward the counter. She cradles 2 tall boy beers.
Hey friend, you shouldn't treat her like that.
You should mind your business, and I ain't your friend.
Someday you will reap what you sow.
Jake reaches in his pocket, throws some money on the counter and pulls her out of the store. Interior cargo van cab, night. Richard climbs into the passenger seat and slams the door behind him.
Follow that piece of shit, Corolla.
Mr. Verne, 60s, sits in the driver's seat. He starts the van.
What you got?
Our first tenant, are we ready?
Ready enough. We haven't briefed the team.
I want this fucker now.
Say no more.
Dissolve 2, interior tunnel cell, night. The cell door opens to reveal Richard. He stands and stares at Jake intensely. Jake is huddled against the wall with his hands zip-tied behind his back.
You gonna beat up a defenseless man?
Richard slowly walks into the cell and kneels down in front of him. Richard stares into Jake's eyes.
Isn't that what you did to her?
Richard grabs Jake by the front of his shirt and lifts him to his feet effortlessly. Dissolve 2, interior cell doorway. Night. Richard walks through the doorway covered in blood spatter. Jake sits beaten and bloodied against the wall behind him. Interior tips bar. Night. Richard opens the door, walks up to the empty bar and sits on a bar stool. Speedy, 60s and weathered with a large belly, stands behind the bar and stocks beer bottles.
What can I get for you?
Beer, please.
You look familiar.
I used to live here. I grew up here, actually.
Speedy grabs a bottle of beer from the cooler and pops the lid off.
You Robert Greene's kid?
Yes, sir.
Speedy sits the beer in front of Richard. The side door opens. John Kimball, late 30s, tall and intimidating with a long beard, walks in with Jimmy, late 30s, shorter but thick with a shorter beard, behind him.
Guess I better get used to this.
Hey, John. Hey, Speedy, can I get a beer for my old friend here and... I'm sorry, what's your name, friend?
It's Jimmy.
A beer for John and Jimmy, please, sir.
John sits on the stool next to Richard and Jimmy sits next to John.
Sorry to hear about your mom.
Thanks, man.
Speedy slides a beer in front of John and Jimmy.
I heard they ruled it a suicide.
That's what they say.
Richard takes a swig of beer.
That's crazy.
So, what's new with you?
Not a lot. I heard you were up at High Desert.
For a few years.
Had friends up there too.
Oh yeah? I pretty much stuck to myself.
That's not what I heard. Rumor is you were somewhat of a shot caller.
Richard turns to John.
Well, if that's the case, then that means I had a lot of dangerous friends.
I also heard those friends did damage to a few of my friends.
Sounds like prison to me.
John swigs on his beer.
That may be so. What I do know is things slowed down in there for me during that time.
Richard swallows the rest of his beer and stands.
I am sorry to hear that, John. I wouldn't know anything about it.
Richard digs into his pocket, pulls out some cash, and slides it on the bar. Exterior Richard's dad's house, night. A worn and paint-chipped house with a dirt yard and a few weeds. A broke-down car sits on the side of the house. A beat-up truck parked in the driveway. He opens the driver's side door and walks through the yard. He steps up to the darkened porch and knocks on the screen door. He waits a beat and knocks again.
I'm coming just a goddamn second.
Richard looks at the front door as the porch light turns on. He squints. Sounds of the deadbolt lock opening. The door creaks open. Richard peers through the screen door.
Hey, Pops.
Cut to black.